I firmly believe, just like I believe businesses are built to be sold, that franchising is not about one. It's always about how do I scale? We start with one because you can't get to two if you can't get number one. But we have to think bigger than one in almost all cases.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode on Wealth Strategy Secrets. Today we are joined by Kim Daly. I wanted to have Kim on the show because she is an expert in franchising. And franchising is such a great way to get into business. If you're a budding entrepreneur or you're a W-2 looking to get rid of that W-2 and create that side hustle that could eventually become your life's passion in that business, I think franchises are really a solid model, right? Because they have the structure, they have infrastructure, they have a plan, and it really helps to reduce the risk for you getting into business. And of course, once you're in business, as we know here, you're able to take advantages of all of the benefits of becoming a business owner, such as better tax advantages, really trying to get your money to work for you better. So really grateful to have Kim on the show today. She has literally had an over 20-year career in franchising and has helped over 1,000 people become successful franchise owners, which I think is really cool. And she also has a show as well and a podcast. So welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you, Dave. I'm excited to be here. Love wealth strategies.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, for those who can be creative, who can think outside of the box and really change their mindset, right? And change the paradigm that we live in, right? Of this, time and effort type economy to a performance-based economy, you can clearly become in the top 10%, top 1%.
Oh, it's so true. 100%. Yeah. I have seen so many people, including myself, just dare to be a little courageous and kind of move away from the normal job and 401k. And it doesn't take long. Once you start focusing and you learn and you meet some people who are doing it and you see what they did, then you're like, wow, I could do that too, right? And you just sort of you have this whole pie of alternative investments where I think the business is the foundation, but then maybe over time you add other things or you start with the other things. Like oftentimes I meet real estate investors who, are at this moment, especially right now, right, where the interest rates are so high and the housing market is so high too, maybe it's a better time to diversify and invest in a business right now. So wherever you're starting from, it's all good. Franchising could be a piece of that big puzzle.
Yeah, for sure. So Kim, tell us a little bit about how did you get into franchising? What was your career originally and what led you down this path?
So it's a great question because nobody wakes up and says, oh yeah, my future is in franchising. What happens is you find yourself at some place where you're dissatisfied with what you currently have and you start looking for more. And that's where most of the people find franchising. So my story happened right out of college. I was on my way to med school. I answered a classified ad in the newspaper, which might give away my age. And it was for a franchise consulting company that ended up offering me a one-year position. Of course, my dad was like, don't do it. You'll never go to med school. I was like, my whole life has been about going to med school. My dad's always right. Anyway, I found this amazing industry where every single day people wake up to live their dreams, and I fell in love. So I did what almost everybody does when they think about owning a business. I went and became an entrepreneur. So I went out and I started my first company. I did that for 5 years. I was living down in South Florida, like we were just talking about. And what happened is 9/11 happened. It was 2001. And I don't know, it just sort of changed everything, right? I was like, I want to get home. I'm turning 30 next year. I want to be closer to my family back in New England. What am I going to do? entrepreneurship is very lonely. You're making it up as you go along. I was successful, but I wasn't sure that I had a future without chasing I had a .com, and I wasn't sure that I was going to be successful without that windfall of private equity money coming in. That's like a needle in a haystack. And I didn't know that I could bet my whole life on that. So that's when I turned back to my friends who I had met in franchising way back right out of college. And the company that I'm a part of now was just getting formulated. And I looked at the role and I thought, wow, that's sort of like being a personal trainer, which is what I did in college. Only instead of talking about fitness and nutrition, we're going to be talking about business ownership, which is something I've just been doing and figuring out on my own for 5 years. And I just had no idea, Dave, that the trajectory I was about to get on. I went to training February 14th of 2002. And here I stand today as, the number one consultant in the country. I've placed more people into small business ownership than any other consultant. I'm so proud of that. It's been the most amazing, life-inspiring, life-changing journey. And I know, and I'm so passionate about it because I know that franchising can change anybody's life the way that it's changed mine.
Sure. And what type of franchises have you seen people be most successful with?
So I like that question. I think, the franchise, when people ask, what's the best franchise to invest in? There is no one one size fits all. It really comes back to your goals as the investor. So do you want to come in as a semi-absentee owner where you keep your job, right? And you have a full-time manager running your business? Do you want to do something like a laundromat that's fairly hands-off once it's set up and going? Or do you want to dive in and be the full-time CEO of your new environment and your new business, right? Creating jobs and running, P&Ls and actually running the business. So it depends on where you're starting from, how much money you have, and then what your goals are personally, professionally, and financially. There are over 3,000 to 4,000 franchises on the market at any one time. And in fact, this is why I have a business to help you sift and sort through that. And you don't ever have to worry about finding the perfect franchise. That's what I do, right? You get to leverage my 22 years of relationship, industry experience, and knowledge. So I'm going to cut through all of that and I'm going to funnel all the options down to 3 to 5. Once I get to know you personally, professionally, and financially, and understand what is that vision of your future, where do you want this business to take you, then it does become pretty easy for me to then overlay my knowledge on top of that model and then bring back some great options for you.
Okay, so let's unpack this really for listeners out there, right? Because I know there's probably a lot of things going on in people's heads, and I love to just kind of walk through this systematically. So, why don't we play? I'm someone who's interested, right, in potentially starting a franchise, right?
Okay.
I'm ready to go. I'm a new client for you, and in addition to, like you said, figuring out kind of my goals, what I'm investing in, right? How do you work with a client? What are some of the questions that I should be asking? What are the things I should be thinking about?
Perfect. So the number one thing we're going to do is when you first get started, I'm going to send you a very basic questionnaire, Dave, so you can start telling me without my interjecting who you are, where you're coming from, what your initial thoughts are about industries you're interested in, your strengths and weaknesses in your past jobs. So I want to align your skill set. So I don't believe that you have to invest in your passion in order for the business to be your passion. I've never made that true. To me, what leads people to happily ever after in business ownership is when the business provides them the money they want and the freedom or the quality of life. So every single investor out there is chasing money that drives a certain quality of life, or a quality of life, but the quality of life demands a certain amount of money. So if we can remove the focus on what the business does, and we can focus on you doing the business and then who you're doing business with, because ultimately, when you find your perfect franchise match, it will be because you found your people. The number one reason to invest in a franchise is because you found people who have a vision for bringing a brand to market. and you buy into that vision. You look at their track record to get comfortable that when they talk about the future, they have enough experience in their past that got them to this moment. And that gives you the comfort that the projection for the future can happen. You look at the tools and the systems where they are today, but know that like a business is dynamic. It's ever changing. So we're not buying what's today. We're buying the future potential. So you want to align yourself to people who have a vision and a culture and enough system that makes you feel confident. And then you say yes, and then you're helping them get to those future outcomes. So you're looking for that connection to people. So when I first get to know you, I'm looking for who are you as a person? What are your beliefs? What do you enjoy doing? What kind of environment do you want to wake up and be in? Do you want to be in a fast-paced, like, fast food restaurant environment? Nobody wants to be there. Do you want to be in a more proactively driven business that's Monday through Friday, where you have maybe career professionals, like maybe they're nurse practitioners, or maybe they're massage therapists, or maybe they're HVAC trade guys, right? But they have a career orientation toward the job that they do. So we're going to discern all of this before I ever come back with ideas. And it's a 2-step process, Dave. First, the questionnaire. Then we get together for about an hour to an hour and a half. We include your spouse. Very important. All the decision makers have to be present because the learning curve is so big. One thing I've learned in 22 years is the vast majority of people out there, they think franchising is only food and retail. You're going to have to beg me to show you food. So there's that. But then they also think all these misconceptions. Oh, isn't a franchise like build it and they will come? Or why do I have to pay to advertise? Wait, isn't that what I'm getting when I buy a franchise? So before we really get to where we can talk to franchisors and learn about their systems and tools, Kim Daly has to do a lot of foundation building with your mindset and your expectations so you really understand what you're doing, why you're going to be doing it. Because once you understand why, then the right questions will naturally flow out of your thoughts and out of your mouth.
That resonates, Kim, right? Because with our holistic wealth strategy, right, we believe most entrepreneurs, what we're really looking for, I mean, it's not only freedom of money, right, but we're looking at freedom of purpose to wake up every day and be fascinated and motivated with what you're doing. We want freedom of time, right, to choose when we want to work. We want freedom of location, right, to be able to work anywhere in the world that we want, and also freedom of relationships, right? To be able to choose the partners you want to work with, the clients you want to work with, right? The team that you want to build, right? Who are all of those people? So I really like that you started there, right? Because I think, when you look at, just unpacking that buzzword of financial freedom, what does it really mean, right? When you can create all of these kind of freedoms in your life, you can live such more of an enriched and extraordinary life, right? Which is kind of, what we're after. So I like that you started that from a franchise perspective there.
You know what I find, David? I'll just add one more thing to that. Especially people that are coming from a corporate background, more so than people who might have already left that or who just pursued their own thing from the beginning, like entrepreneurs looking for more diversification. But it is the grind of life when you're working for somebody else's dreams is exhausting. And when people come to me and they say, I don't want to work, and I spend a lot of time really trying to understand what does that mean. And what I've come to is it's not that they don't want to work. It's that they want what you just said, the mental freedom to work with who they want to work with, to be in control of the environment, right? And the time. Because I'm like, people say, you're the most passionate person, Kim, I've ever met. And I work a lot, right? And not because I'm a workaholic. I just love what I do and it fuels me. It doesn't drain me, right? So where's the cutoff? Like, that's the hard part for me in my life. I'm like, oh my gosh, I worked all day. Like, I got other responsibilities I got to tend to. And not because I'm driven by a financial gain, because I'm driven by the passion of like, I really believe in what I'm doing and I'm helping so many people and I can help so many people. And that just gets me out of bed every day and keeps me going all day long. So it's that mental freedom that I think most people are looking for. And you definitely can find it. It doesn't mean that business ownership is easy, right? It doesn't mean that at all, because it's not. But it means you're mentally free to be focused on the things that inspire you and maybe pay other people to do the things you don't like to do.
Right. It's really being in your unique ability, right? And when you're in your unique ability and you have those freedoms, there's just so much less friction in your life.
Correct.
And you become more mission and purpose driven. So it doesn't really feel like work, right?
Yes.
And I think, to your point, this is what a lot of people are really after, but they can't. Sometimes it's just really hard to make that transition, right? Because we all came from this environment of, corporate America or whatever it is. We've got limiting beliefs. We've got things holding us back from the past. So how do I make that, move forward, into entrepreneurship, being a business owner? But I think franchising is a really good way to kind of, accelerate that or help you get out of the blocks, really quickly. So let's talk about the economics of this, Kim, right? I mean, how much do people, should they consider if they're, to invest in something like this? Is it, 200K, 500K, any kind of ballparks in terms of what would they invest to start a business? Are there financing programs out there for people to start the business like that? And, what is some of the thought process that they would be thinking about?
Okay, great question. So one of the very first conversations I have with people, Dave, is where I teach people what their money buys. I don't believe it's fair for me to say, well, how much do you think you want to invest, until you understand what I hear with the number that you give, right? So money and time are uniquely correlated in a business. They're actually opposite of each other. So the lower the investment of money, the bigger the investment of owner time commitment, right? So if you look at a home-based business, maybe you're going to be have you ever heard of the business called Soccer Shots, where they go and they rent fields and they gather all the little kids and they teach kids to play soccer? That's considered a home-based franchise, very successful, right? You don't have a very low fixed costs. You're renting a field. You're only paying rent for the hours that you're using that field. You're marketing, signing up kids, and then you're bringing coaches and playing with kids and teaching them soccer. So you have a very low investment with low fixed costs, but a high owner time commitment, because if you're not out networking, marketing, signing up families, working in the community to get your fields, nothing's going to happen. Now let's flip that to the opposite and talk about like a Marriott hotel, which is a franchise, right? So you could have millions of dollars, but owners of the Marriott are not working the Marriott, right? In fact, Marriott actually has a program where you can build it and then they'll bring in the team to actually manage your hotel. So it's complete opposite. And there's 50 shades of gray, 500 shades of gray in between. So this is where I come in. So we're going to gather your net worth, but just because you have the money doesn't mean you have the risk tolerance to invest the money either. I need you to be in the most abundant mindset you can be in, because there's enough feeling of I'm not worthy. Can I do this? Like insecurity and the unknown. So I need the money to not be a scarcity for you. So we're not going to bet the farm. We're not going to put you in a position where you feel like you're over leveraged. That's the number one reason businesses fail. And we can prevent that. So it's all about educating you. To answer your question simply, there are franchises that are under 100,000 with no net worth requirements, pure cash plays. And there are franchises that are millions of dollars where they're highly leveraged through loans, and a lot in between. My part of the journey here is to help, first of all, match you to opportunities that are comfortable and safe level of investment. But even if you are then looking for financing, I have all those amazing relationships, right? Most of the people I work with will be using some form of lending, whether that's using that 401k that you've been accruing over years, that's sitting there that you can't touch. Well, in franchising, there is a way that you can use it. It's called the ROBS program, which is we always joke you're robbing the IRS because it's called the rollover for business startups. So you should Google that if that intrigues you. But I have amazing friends who are experts in how this works, who can talk to your accountant even, or financial planner to help you understand how you use that without creating a taxable event. If you have more than 50,000 in a 401k, it's 100% accessible to you. You can have it in about 30 days and you will not create a taxable event. So most people, even if they're going for an SBA loan or some type of loan, the bank still requires you to come to the table with usually 20 or 30%. Now, I'm not an expert, so don't quote me on that, right? It's just a conversation. I'm just enough to, help you understand. So if they say, hey, you come with the first 20 and we'll bring in the construction loan and the working capital for the back 80, and let's say the first 20 is 100,000, well, a lot of people don't have 100,000 sitting around in their savings account, but they might have it in their 401k. So they might use 100,000 from the 401k rollover plus the SBA loan to come in on the back.
What if everything you thought you knew about investing was wrong? Would you like to create a wealth strategy like the top 1% have and get exclusive access to top private equity deals that provide downside protection, tax efficiency, predictable cash flow, and have a lucrative upside? Discover how with the Pantheon Advantage and join our investor club today at pantheoninvest.com.
Makes sense. So going through this journey and this process, right, we've identified our goals. I've talked through the economics and what we're thinking about investing with you. How do you do some of that matching and everything? Because my bet is that there's probably franchises out there, if someone were to get into this, that they literally haven't even thought of before. Right? Different kind of businesses like that. So yeah, do you have some kind of matching process, filtering, or how does that
Yes, work? Dave, I have this massive algorithm in my brain.
It's all AI driven, right? You enter all your information, it's AI, and then boom, you're done, right?
Yeah. Perfect. No, so the matching is more relational and experiential than it is data science, right? So therefore, if you went to, 5 different consultants, you might get 5 different mixes. But it comes back to, my 20 years of knowing who's who and what's what. So all franchisors out there are not created equal. Not every franchisor out there deserves your hard-earned savings. And not every franchisor out there is going to suit your level of risk, right? If you are, let's say you're an engineer and you like stable environments, right? And you want as little uncertainty as possible. Well, investing in an emerging brand may be like way too risky, right? On the flip side, if you're an entrepreneur, you've built some businesses before, but you're like, that was the hardest thing I ever did. I want to own another business, but I do not want to start from scratch, but I don't need a lot of support. An emerging brand could fit you well. So again, it comes back to understanding like where people are starting from, what past experiences they're bringing, what skill sets. Do you want to be in a business where the primary role you play is creating jobs, leading and managing people? That can be a very employee heavy business that for somebody else who does not like that skill or doesn't have that skill would die in, right? So maybe you're like, I've been a salesperson. I've been out on the road, driving business development. That's where I thrive. Meeting people, being out and about. I would die if I had to be stuck in a building all day. Well, you don't want to own a UPS store then, right? You want to have the opportunity to be in a business that gets you out and about. So we're matching based on these criteria and then overlaying my 20 years of knowledge and relationships. So I'm part of a company called Fran Choice. That's my franchise. So my parent organization in Minneapolis, I have a whole team of people behind me that every single day they're out at trade shows, the IFA, which is the International Franchise Association. They hold conventions. They're going to Springboard, which is a launch pad for new entrepreneurs that are becoming franchisors. They are creating my inventory. So this is a free service for me and you, right? And I am never going to call you my client. You're always my candidate because you don't get paying me money and we're under no obligation to each other. And I always tell people, this is totally free advice. Do with it as you want. Right? So it's your life. I'm not here to push you. I'm just here to guide you. And to the extent that I can help you make a decision that you feel good about, then I've done my job, whether that decision is yes or no. So I'm going to overlay, after we've looked at all these different topics, your risk tolerance and the day-to-day environment. Do you want, even if you're like, I like home services. Okay, what does that mean? Do you want to be inside my home or outside? Right? Out in the yard, you could be building patios, pools, fences, irrigation systems, outdoor lighting, landscaping, fertilizing grass, picking up dog poop, power washing my fence, right? Like a million options inside my house, paint, flooring, windows, California closets, interior design. Like there's so many options. So I'm going to go through all this criteria at the very end, after we've talked about the role you want to play, the owner you want to be, the environment you want to be in. And by that, I mean like a retail setting or like in an office setting. And then if you're in an office, are you in like an office suite or are you in like a functional office back in an industrial lot, right? Because all of these connote even how you dress, right? And that matters to people, right? Some people think of business and they're like, I want to be in a suit. Most people today are like, screw the suit, right? I want to be in jeans and like the company polo, right? Like, so, but all of this matters. Can you see yourself driving a van that, as you're moving billboard through the town? Can you see yourself opening that, Yoga 6 studio that you drive by and say, that's my business? And your family and friends are like, oh, how did you get to own that? Right? Like all of these things matter, some more than others. And so at the end of all of this, at the very end of our consultation, then we're going to talk about the widget. And by that, I mean, I want to ask you, okay, is there any low hanging fruit? Like if someone asked me, Kim, would you be interested in a business in health and wellness? Well, yeah, because that's who I really, in my personal life, those are my passions. So if everything was equal and you could align a great franchisor and give me the environment I want and allow me to use the skills that I have, but it happened to be in health and wellness or anti-aging, I mean, that's a score for me. Or pets, right? So that's where we do kind of that cherry on top of the sundae and trying to match the industry to something that you may have a passion in. But that, at the end of the day, believe it or not, becomes the least important criteria for people once I take them through this journey of really understanding and thinking through waking up and being a business owner. You realize it's all, whether you're selling yoga or you're selling grooming dogs or you're selling changing oil, it's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So how about this, Kim, right? So we've heard that, we're in this phase called the silver tsunami, right? Where we have a massive amount of baby boomers retiring. And a lot of those boomers are looking to actually exit their businesses because most of their net worth is actually tied up in those businesses. So can you take actually a mature franchise and then sell that to someone? Because in my mind, that would even reduce the risk even further, right? Because it's already been running and up and running. You've got customers, you've got a track record and everything.
So the answer to that question is 1,000%. You are building an asset that is yours to sell. Now, can Kim Daly help you buy an established business for sale? No, that would be a business broker. That's a totally different specialty. So in my business, I have no territory restriction. I am contracted by franchisors for new growth. Now, sometimes if I'm looking like in the Dallas market and I have a specific idea in mind for somebody that's a more well-established brand and I run the territory check and the franchisor says, hey, we have an owner that's motivated to sell, well, then I can bring that to you. But I don't have a database of existing businesses for sale. That would be going to your local Sunbelt business broker or VR business broker. There's all kinds of local business brokers who have a database of businesses in your local area that are for sale. And some of those will include franchises. But to make a better point to the question you're asking, when you're thinking about building a franchise, in my opinion, all businesses should be built to be sold. And this is absolutely part of the criteria that I'm using. So if you tell me, Kim, I only want to be in this for maybe 10 years, I'm like, all right, that's going to lead me to industries where you have a faster trajectory to build something meaningful, scale it to multiple units. So when you go to sell it, it's worth something valuable, right? Imagine have you ever heard of the brand Orange Theory Fitness?
Yes.
Okay. So imagine, do you remember maybe about 5 or 10 years ago when the whole world woke up, I do, and everybody wanted an Orange Theory Fitness. And I'm like, there's no more Orange Theory Fitness locations. The time to get into that was 10 years ago, right? So and why that is we get, as consultants, we get these young pioneering brands, and people are like, well, why would I buy a franchise when it doesn't have a name brand recognition? I'm like, you have to have the vision, right? People could have asked you that question 30 years ago when Subway became a franchise. Why do I need a franchise to open a deli? If you had no vision, you couldn't say yes to that. But if you had a vision of being part of what you were contributing to and what you were building and that brand equity that would grow over 10, 20 years, right? Planet Fitness, Massage Envy, Orange Theory, European Wax, right? These are Hand and Stone. These are all brands. There's thousands of them that we know and love as American consumers. And those brands hold brand equity that if you are one of the pioneers in the market because you got in early and you have the best, most established locations in a market, when private equity starts looking at the industry and saying, we want Planet Fitness stores, they look at you. And they come in and they pay big fat multiples. There's always a peak, right, to that brand. And it's usually before the franchise goes public. Right? And sometimes it's after, but that's when, like, Senior Care is another one. And there are some brands that hold their value, right? They're more like Honda Pilots, like they just kind of hold and then others are like more your Maserati. It's just a faster ride to the top. They both get you there. Some are slow and steady. Some are rocket ships. Every person out there is different in terms of their risk tolerance and the ride that they're looking for. And that's how I help you, by aligning you to the right ride so that you don't feel it's a, hair-blowing experience if that's not what you're looking for.
You mentioned your passion is in personal health and fitness, anti-aging, longevity. I share that with you as well, and I've been watching the space. A lot of investments kind of going into that space. Anything that looks kind of exciting in that space that you're seeing right now?
Ooh, so many. So since the pandemic, really, there's been this shift, right, toward preventative health. And so a lot of these things, what's funny is they're not new. I equate them to Massage Envy. Like, Massage Envy didn't create the massage. They just took the massage out of the high-end spa where it was unattainable for the average person to have a regular massage. And they put it in a retail setting, wrapped it in a membership, made it affordable, convenient, and accessible. So we have all kinds of anti-aging and natural therapies that are emerging from the naturopath doctor's offices, where I've been a patient for 20 years. We've been doing all of these things, and now they're becoming more mainstream, like using infrared light or infrared sauna or cold plunge or IV drips, right? We see some of these are wrapped in one location where you can get all of them, like a Restore Hyper Wellness or a Pause Studio. I love their tagline. It says, while we can't stop life, there is a pause. Something like that. And then we have other ones like Beam Infrared Light franchise, which is just that modality. And it'll be interesting to see over time how it shakes out, kind of like we watch the fitness market go from the big 24-hour gyms and Lifetime Fitness gyms down to a Yoga 6 and a Cycle Bar and an Orange Theory, right, where people were paying for the modality they wanted. So right now we see these anti-aging and wellness centers we have some of them opening with all the modalities, and then we have some opening specific to one modality. I don't know how it will shake out over time. Yeah. Maybe they'll all win.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm seeing them sprout up all over. Optimize is one, and Phoenix, and a lot of they're kind of basically, you can go as like an a la carte. So you could do red light therapy, you could do grounding. They've got the biocharger, like OsteoStrong. They've got the biocharger in there, or ozone therapy, the IVs. As you talked about, it's really fascinating to see that blossom. And I think
I love the people who are like, "Oh, this is new. It's woo woo. It's voodoo. There's no science for that." I'm like, depends whose science you're looking at, because there's plenty of science, and it's definitely not new, right?
Well, you go and try it and see how you feel after. I mean, that's what I always tell people. Just go try it. Does it work for you? And, you see the benefits. And to me, investing in your health, there isn't any better investment that you could do.
Well, what I love is when people take the step the leap of faith, to take control of, their time by owning a business. It's a step into like accountability. And what happens, I think it's a trickle effect, Dave, right? Sometimes people start by changing their life by losing 50 or 100 pounds, and they get control of their health. And then they're like, you know what? I need to get control of my professional career, and they own a business. Other times it starts with the business. And once they get control and they start sensing freedom and they start thriving in that accountability place, all of a sudden they're gym goers, all of a sudden, right? Or they're developing a yoga practice, or they're starting to eat better, and they're looking for ways to improve other areas of their life. I think it all goes together. It's just about like each person's going to start from a different place.
Yeah. I've got a good friend of mine. He's got 65 hair cuttery.
Nice.
Locations.
Yeah.
And another guy, he's got about 85 Planet Fitnesses. In fact, up north where you are. So that's kind of interesting to talk to them about their journey. Is not only can you get into a franchise, but you could scale that. So if you figure out how to optimize really that one franchise, right, you could just go continue to buy more, right, and scale up from there.
Franchising, in my opinion, franchising is never about one. The whole model is designed for scale. Wealth is always created through scale, right? Even if you're a real estate, right, investor, it's not about one rooftop. It's how do you leverage your time across multiple rooftops? The same thing will be true in franchising. So, if you take one location of something and let's say it can gross $1 million and net you 100 or 200 grand. Well, like that's the starting point, right? So but you have to be willing to grow, because the owner who owns 1 or 2 is different than the owner who owns 10, right? You grow into that owner. You don't start there with 10, right? You start with the idea of you get 1 up and going, and then you replicate that, and then you start building the skills you need to step back, hire managers, and keep thinking bigger and bigger and bigger, and then managing a bigger entity, right? So, but I firmly believe, just like I believe businesses are built to be sold, that franchising is not about one. It's always about how do I scale? We start with 1 because you can't get to 2 if you can't get number 1. But we have to think bigger than 1 in almost all cases, whether it's brick and mortar or non-brick and mortar. And when it's non-brick and mortar, it would be more about how many territories, right? So let's pick an example like house cleaning, like the maids, right? So let's say they sell you a territory of 50,000 qualified households. So in some zip coded area, there are 50,000 targeted homes at 75 in income or above. Those are your target people that you're driving SEO to and direct mail to, right? Those are your targeted customers. But if you buy 2 territories, now you have 100,000. You just doubled your population that you can market to, but you're not doubling the cost of entry. You're just going to pay a secondary franchise fee, which is usually reduced because the franchisors want people who have bigger businesses. All experienced franchisors know single unit operators are their most difficult operators to manage. They want people who have that empire building mentality, who are looking to diversify themselves among territories or locations and have a bigger vision, because then you're not going to be so singularly hyper focused on the performance of any one. It's the performance of the entire portfolio, just like any other investment portfolio. The more spread out you are, the lower the risk.
Yeah. So, Kim, if you could give just one piece of advice to listeners about how they could get in the game, what would it be?
You got to take the first step. The only advice I have is let's get started. Let's start a conversation, because you don't know what you don't know. And we trip over our own limiting beliefs. One of the things we haven't talked about, Dave, is once I have these 3 to 5 concepts for you, I don't just leave you. Like, I'm the mindset coach. The daily coach came from people saying, how do I get a daily dose of Kim? But the second way and the real way that the reason I call myself the daily coach is, so I'm a franchisee. And for my first 8 years, I was an average performing franchisee. And then 1 year later, this was back in 2011, I made history in my industry. I did over 350% more revenue in 2011 than I did in 2010 or the previous 8 years. So I was the same me. Franchise was the same process, but something clearly changed. And it wasn't my skill that first year. It was my mindset. So I teach people what I did. Because if I can help you buy down 8 years, now you may not be able to go all the way to learning all of this from the beginning. You might still have to spend a couple of years figuring it out on your own. But if it's booked there in your mind somewhere, right? Log it in. And I'm developing a whole coaching practice and coaching programs because I'm so passionate about saying yes to the life. So there's 2 yeses I see. The first is saying yes to the dream to own a business and own and control your life. And the second yes is showing up to that first yes every single day, right? And they're different and they require different mindsets. And so while you're working with me and getting to know franchisors, I'm going to start coaching that mindset of yours. I'm going to help you understand why people really fail. It's not the reasons you probably think. It's so much deeper, but it's also so simple. And most importantly, we're going to talk about why people are successful. Because I want to set you up with that success mindset that helps you own it from day one. People want to own it, but then they don't want to be accountable. I know because I was that person. I wanted to blame it on the economy and my franchisor and what I wasn't getting. And then I woke up and got sick and tired of myself. And so there's a better way. I was made for more. I want to make more money. I set a goal. I put my head down. I stopped making excuses. I held myself accountable for 1 year. And I made history, and that changed everything for how I show up for myself, but more importantly, how I get to show up for you.
Awesome, Kim. This has been really enlightening, and I think it is a great way for people to just, again, either create that side hustle or create a bridge into entrepreneurship that can, open up so many possibilities. So if people would like to reach out and connect with you, learn more, what is the best place?
I'm all over the socials at The Daly Coach, DALY. Please check it out. I put out 5 to 6 pieces of content a week, but if you are ready, go right to my website, thedailycoach.com. I have a free 20-minute download. It's a mini boot camp on the real value proposition of a franchise. Of course, my contact, thousands of testimonials. Check it out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time and insights, Kim. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on as your guest.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book, go to holisticwealthstrategy.com. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming opportunities at Pantheon, please visit pantheoninvest.com. That's pantheoninvest.com.